Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Chaf Gimel, Daf 23 of Masechta Pesachim. What can I say about today's Daf? Today's Daf starts off talking about more cases of Isser Achila and Isser Anah, that machlokas between Chizkiah and Rabbi Abo. That part is like cool, but once we get to the bottom of Chaf Gimel Amud Aleph, things start to get a little bit tricky. You got. I don't know if tricky is the right word, but slightly difficult. You gotta focus. We discuss a little bit getting benefit from hameitz on Pesach, machlokas between Rabbi Yossi Aglili and the Chachamim there. Then we get into a machlokas between Rabbi Yossi Aglili and Rabbi Akiva regarding Chaylev nevayla, the forbidden fats of a nevayla, and then at the end we wrap up, or seemingly wrap up, the machlokas between Chizkiah and Rabbi Abahu, and try to figure out the nafkamina between them. Let us begin on Daf Chaf Gimel Amud Aleph, about 6, 7, 8 lines from the top. V'arei Trumeh, Dachman Amar v'chozar lo yochal kodesh, that by Trumeh it says that any zar, any non-Kohen, is not allowed to eat Trumah. Fine. Vitnan. So, well, it says lo yochal kodesh, right? So if you're a bi'abo, so lo yochal means don't eat it and also don't get hana from it, don't get benefit from it. Vitnan, and yet we learned in the Mishnah in Masechta Eruvin, me'arvin l'nazir b'yayin v'lisah b'truma, that a Nazirite is permitted to make an eruvei tchumen. It's the first Mishnah in the third parak or something, that a Nazir is permitted to make an eruvei tchumen with wine, even though he's not allowed to drink wine. And a Yisrael is allowed to make an eruvei tchumen with truma, even though he is not allowed to consume truma. So what do we see? So we see that by truma, even though it says lo yochal, which according to Rabbi Abo means don't eat it and don't get benefit from it, yet we're allowed to use it for an eruv. No. So Rav Papa shani asam da amrikra chumaschem shelachem tehei. So Papa says, yeah, but it's different by Truma, because by Truma it says Trumaschem, your Truma, it's yours, you can use it for an Erev. You can get benefit from it. Ve'idach Trumaschem d'cho Yisrael ka'amar. Where now, so Chizkiah is going to say, Lo yochal kodesh only means an Isser Achila. It means nothing regarding an Isser Anah, it's mutar ba'anah. Now, so if that's the case, why do I need Trumaschem? To teach me that you're allowed to get Hana. I already know you can get Hana if I'm Chizkiah. So he says, Trumaschem isn't really anything special. The Chol Yisrael Kam is just saying your Truma, but don't make fancy drushes to teach that it's also that it's mutar ba'anah, because we already know it's mutar ba'anah from the fact that it says lo yochal, and that just means Isra Achila, not Isra Anah. V'arei Nazir, Rachman Amar mechatzanim v'adzag lo yochel. What about by Nazir? By Nazir it says from pit to peel, do not eat. Now, if you're Rabbi Abo, that means don't eat and don't get benefit. Vitnan, marvin the Nazir b'yayin. And we just learned a few minutes ago that a Nazir is permitted to make an eruvei tchumen with wine. So, on the one hand, Rabbi Abo would say that it's asur b'achila and asur b'anah, yet he seems to be allowed to use it for a eruv. Omar Marzutra shiny awesome. Damukra nizro shelo yehei. Oh, so says Marzutra that by a Nazir, it's unique, it's different, he's allowed to get benefit from the wine, because it says Nizro, his days of being a Nazir, and therefore, Shelo Yehei, they belong to him, i.e., although he's not allowed to drink wine, he can get benefit from it, he can use it for his Eruv. Rav Ashi Amar Kadosh Yeh Gadel Pera Se'ar Rosho, says Rav Ashi, the Pasuk says that his hair will be Kadosh, will be restricted. Gidulo kadosh ve'in davar acher kadosh. That his hair, what he grows, is kadosh, is restricted, is asur b'anah, but anything else is not asur b'anah. And his the wine he's not allowed to drink, but he can get benefit from it. He can use it for his eruv. Midi ve'in davar acher ksiv. The Gemara says, but it doesn't say anywhere in the pasuk about other things other than his hair. I mean, it says, meaning that. It's a very nice drasha of Ashi to say, right? Kadosh Gadol Peres Rosho, it only means his hair, not other things. But it doesn't really say anything about other things. Rather, it makes more sense, like Mar Zutra, that Nizro, and it's his Nazarite days, he can get benefit from them. Very Chodosh. What about Chodosh? Who remembers what Chodosh is? Everybody remembers what Chodosh is. So tell me. Chodosh is the new wheat, the new grain from this year before the Korban Omer has been brought. So, if you harvested some wheat before Pesach, so you gotta put it aside until the second day of Pesach, once the Korban Omer has been brought. Okay? Dachman Omer, it says about Chodosh, v'lechem v'kali v'karmel lo sochelu. That don't eat any of these grains from the new crop until the Omer is brought. So, lo sochelu means don't eat it, don't get benefit from it if you're Rabbi Abo. Vitnan, and yet, we learn in the Mishnah, that you're allowed to harvest these grains, these wheat plants, when they're still kind of grassy, and you can feed them to your animals. So we see that you're getting benefit from them. So it's different over there because in the context of Chodosh it says K'tzirchem shalachem yehei, that it's yours, you can get benefit from it. Ve'idach, and Chizkiah, who says we already know that you're allowed to get benefit because lo sochelu only means don't eat it, you're allowed to get benefit. So K'tzirchem d'cho yisrael mashma, he says K'tzirchem isn't really teaching us much, it's just saying your harvest, but not to say yours that you can get benefit from it. No, you can get benefit from it because it says lo sochelu, which just means asur ba'achila, but mutar ba'ana. Okay. Bari shrotzim. What about little shrutzi guys? The Torah says sheketzu lo ye'achol, that by shrotzim, by little like rats and stuff. So it says it's a sheketz lo ye'achel, they may not be eaten. So now this one is nifal. This one is not only Rabbi Abo, it's also Chizkiah. Right? Both Rabbi Abo and Chizkiah would say that sheketzu lo ye'achel would mean it's asur ba'achila and asur ba'ana. Okay, vitnan, and we learn in the Mishnah tzayadei chayev ofis v'dagim, that the trappers of wild animals, which we said includes the other day we said that a chaya can include like a weasel. So v'ofis v'dagim, and birds and fish, shenizdamnu lo minim tmein, that they got all sorts of tamei animals. Mutar and the mochel lenachim, you're allowed to sell them to non-Jews. So meaning, even if you would have gotten, let's say, a weasel, you could sell it to a non-Jew. So we see that shrotzim are asur b'achila, but they're mutar ba'ana. So shiny awesome, the Amar Kra, over there it's different by shrotzim because it says lachem. It says sheketzu, was it sheketzu lachem, I think. So to you, shalachem yehei, it's yours. Okay, well, if it's yours, then you should be able to get benefit from shrotzim even milechatchila, meaning versus as opposed to b'diavad, meaning we're talking about trappers. If you have trappers who they came back to visit their trap and see what they trapped, and they saw, I got a rodent. So in that case, okay, fine, Beseder, you're allowed to get benefit from it, but you're not allowed to specifically like trap rodents and get benefit from them. So we say, shiny hacha damakra yehyu bavayasan yuhu. So we say, yeah, that's true. You can't lichatchila get benefit from these rodents because it says, because even though it says lachem, which means it's yours, and b'diavad you can get benefit, but yehyu bavayasan yuhu, that they should remain on their own, meaning even though it says lachem, that it's yours, you can get benefit, but it also says yehyu bavayasan yuhu, that they should remain in their like initial state, i.e. that you shouldn't get benefit from them. So meaning it means that lichatchila you should not get benefit from them, but b'diavad, if you found epis weasel in your trap, so then you can sell it and get benefit from it. Okay. Now here's a kasha for Chizkiah. Question. According to Chizkiah, Well, let's start maybe according to Rabbi Abahu. According to Rabbi Abahu, both, so it says by sheketz, who lo ye'achel, it shouldn't be eaten. Now, according to Rabbi Abahu, it doesn't matter if it says ye'achel or yochel. Both of them mean that it's also b'achila and also b'ana. And lachem says to teach, no, actually, by shratzim it's mutter b'ana b'diavad. Fine. But according to Chizkiah, who says ye'achel means also b'achila and also b'ana, yochal would mean also b'achila and mutter b'ana. So then, why does the pasuk need to say by shratzim lo ye'achel, which means that it's also b'achila and also b'ana, and then we needed the pasuk to say lachem to you to say that even though it's also b'ana, because it says lachem, therefore you're allowed to get hana from it. I have a better idea. Lo lichtav rachmana lo ye'achel v'lo bai lachem. Don't write lo ye'achel in the nifal, in the passive. Rather write lo yochal. And then I'll know it's also b'achila but mutter b'ana. Then I don't need the word lachem to teach me that it's mutter b'ana. So Chizkiah said, that's a good question, but guess what? How do you think I know that lo ye'achel means also b'achila and mutter and also b'ana? From here. This is the case. The reason why I say that when it's written lo ye'achel, it means also b'achila and also b'ana is specifically from here, because since we see that by over here by shratzim it says lo ye'achel, and we needed a pasuk to teach me that even though it says lo ye'achel, I still need to write lachem to say that you're nonetheless allowed to get benefit. This is how we must know, therefore, that when it says lo ye'achel, it means do not eat it, do not get benefit, and the pasuk then had to go out of its way to say lachem, to say that you're allowed to get benefit, implying that any place where it doesn't say lachem, or doesn't have any other indication that you're permitted to get benefit, well then it would be forbidden from getting benefit. So from shratzim, that is how Chizkiah learns that lo ye'achel means also b'achila and also b'ana. But lo yochal would be also b'achila but mutter b'ana, according to Chizkiah. Vari chametz. What about chametz? The pasuk says lo ye'achel chametz. That chametz may not be eaten. Okay, no. So that's both according to Chizkiah and according to Rabbi Abahu. Also b'achila and also b'ana. Yet Vitanya, Rabbi Yosef Glili Omer says Rabbi Yosef Glili, Tama al atzmicha he'achometz also b'ana kol shiva. Rabbi Yosef Glili says, I don't understand how anybody could say that chometz would be also b'ana on Pesach. Obviously it's also b'achila, but Rabbi Yosef Glili says that chometz is permitted to get benefit from during Pesach. So on the one hand it says lo ye'achel chometz. Now everyone, both Chizkiah and Rabbi Abahu say ye'achel means also b'achila and also b'ana, and yet we have Rabbi Yosef Glili who can say, and Rabbi Yosef Glili is a Tana, Chizkiah and Rabbi Abahu are Amoraim, and yet we have Rabbi Yosef Glili saying that chametz on Pesach is mutter b'ana. So shayni asam to Amakra v'lo yeroy lecha seor shelcha yehi. So the Gemara says, yeah, but chametz is different because it says v'lo yeroy lecha seor, that you should not see seor, meaning that it belongs to you to the extent that you're allowed to get benefit from it. V'rabbanan, the rabbis who say that you're not allowed to get benefit from chametz on Pesach, shelcha as we saw earlier, that you're not allowed to see your chametz, but you're allowed to see other people's chametz, or shel gavoa, which I think is like hektish. Okay. No. So Yosef Glili says that you're allowed to get benefit from chametz on Pesach. It says lecha, that it's yours. And the Chacham said, no, lecha just means that you're not allowed to see your own chametz, but you could see other people's chametz. V'idach, Yosef Glili would respond, trei lecha ksive. Yeah, but it says lecha twice. Therefore, one could be to teach that you're allowed to get ana. The other one to teach that it's specifically your chametz that you're not allowed to see. V'idach. Whereas the Chacham respond, Chan benachri shekibashto v'chan benachri shelo kibashto. So whereas the Chacham say no, but we need both of those lichas. One's to say that you're not allowed to see your chametz, but you're allowed to see a non-Jewish person's chametz who is part of your household, and one is to say a non-Jewish person who is not part of your household. You would be allowed to see his chametz. Ve'idach tzlas lecha ksive. Whereas Rabbi Yosef Glili says that it says licha 3 times, right? There's 3 psukim actually that say licha, and therefore you could still say that one is for nachri shekibashta, one is nachri shelo kibashta, and the other one is to teach that it's yours to say that you're allowed to get anah. Whereas the Chachamim say, and the way I understand it is this, that meaning it says licha 3 times, but it's as if it says it twice, because 2 of those are to teach. One of them is for seor, the other one is hameitz, right? To say lo yirah lecha hameitz, lo yirah lecha seor, that applies to both seor and to hameitz. Then you have the other one to teach, I guess whether it's nachri shekibashta or nachri shelo kibashta. Okay, so now the Gemara says lema ketanoi. So let's say that maybe this machlokes between Chizkiah and Rabbi Abahu about whether lo yochal is asur b'achila and asur b'ana like Rabbi Abahu, or only asur b'achila but mutar b'ana like Chizkiah. Let's say it's machlokes tanoim. Who's ready? Here we go. Ye asur l'chol malacha. So it says in the context of Chaylev. What's Chaylev? Chaylev is certain forbidden fats, right? The animal has fat. There are certain fats that you're not allowed to eat, and if you eat them, you chayav kares. Exciting times. It says also l'chol malacha. So in the context of Chaylev, and so it says, so this pasuk is really in the context of Chaylev nevayla. Okay, so if you have a treifa, but really it's going to be coming up mostly in the context of nevayla. So if you have a nevayla, right, an animal that died a non-slaughtered death, a non-kosher slaughtered death, so it's nevayla, and this animal has certain fats, okay? So we're talking about the fats of this animal, okay? So ya'aseh l'chol malacha, ma tam lo l'chol malacha. So how come it has to say l'chol malacha? How come it has to say that you can do all types of malacha? Like, what is l'chol? What's everything coming to teach? Sheyachol lemleches gavoa yeh muter, lemleches hedyot yeh aser. Is it possible that maybe it would only be aser for muter from leches gavoa? One second. I'm confusing myself. Well, I'm not really confusing myself. We just missed an important point because the Gemara didn't tell us. In the context of Chaylev, it says lo sochelu. Well, the first part, which is just regular Chaylev, says lo sochelu. The next part, which is by nevayla and treifa, it says lo sochlu. But nonetheless, in the context of Chaylev, it says basically a lashon of lo yochal, lo sochel, lo sochelu, right? Which is, Rabbi Abahu would say that it's asur b'achila and asur b'ana. Chizkiah would say it's asur b'achila but mutar b'ana. Okay, great. Now that we've said that, let's read it again. So lema ketanoi. Let's say it's machlokas tanoim. Ye asur l'chol malacha. So even though it says in the pasuk, right, lo sochlu by Chaylev, okay, even though it says lo sochlu, still it has to say ye asur l'chol malacha, that you can do all types of malacha with this Chaylev. So why does it say all malacha? Well, because I might have the havmina to say that I'm allowed to use it in the Beis Hamikdash. If, for example, there are hides that need some fats to, coat the outside with fat. So I would say, okay, I'm allowed to use the fats for these hides, because after all, Chaylev is allowed in the Beis Hamikdash, right? That's davka Chaylev is what you put on the mizbeach for God. So therefore, I would think, okay, maybe I can use these fats in the Beis Hamikdash, but nemleches hedyot yeh aser. But I wouldn't be allowed to use it for just, I don't know, if I have my own hides that I want to rub Chaylev on, that would not be allowed. Therefore, it says that you can do all malacha with Chaylev. So what do we see? So we see that I would have assumed that Chaylev would be asur b'ana'ah. Okay, so meaning it says lo sochlu by Chaylev, and therefore I would think that, like Rabbi Abahu, that it means that it's asur b'achila and asur b'ana. Therefore it says l'chol malacha, right? You also l'chol malacha, that actually you're allowed to do all malacha with it, not only malacha for God, which I would think is permitted anyways, because the Chaylev is what goes on the mizbeach for God anyways, but even malacha for regular people is permitted, because it says Ye'aseh l'chol malacha. But if not for the fact that it says Ye'aseh l'chol malacha, that I'm allowed to do all malacha with it, I would have thought that I'm not allowed to do malacha because I'm not allowed to get hana'ah. Okay, that sounds like Rabbi Abahu. Rabbi Akiva Omer Sheyachol l'meleches Hedyot yehi tahor, Meleches gavoa yehi tameh, Tamalo melecho melacha. So Yossi Aglili, we're going to argue, is actually saying like Chizkiah, that actually, when it says lo sochlu, it means it's also ba'achila, but it's mutar ba'ana. You're allowed to get benefit from it. And therefore, what does it say? So what's the thing that I would have thought would have been problematic, that l'chol malacha is coming, that Yossi l'chol malacha is coming to permit? So it's saying, sheyachol l'meleches hedyot ye'itar l'meleches gavoa ye'itami. I might think that the Chaylev would be tahor for meleches hedyot, that if for, in terms of Chaylev, because Chaylev is coming for nevayla, is tameh, and nevayla is an avatuma. So I might think that, okay, so maybe in terms of being pure, it can be considered to be pure for a regular person, but it wouldn't be considered to be pure for meleches gavoa, for God. So it would be considered impure for God. Tamalo melechol malacha, that for all malacha, that it's considered pure for God. Okay, we're going to explain this machlokas a little bit more, but the point being, what we want to say is that Rabbi Akiva holds like Chizkiah, who says lo sochlu is also ba'achila but mutar ba'ana, and therefore what I would have thought would be a problem, but ye'asa l'chol malacha is coming to permit, is tuma and tara, to say that Chaylev is considered, that the Chaylev nevayla is considered tahor to such an extent that you can even use it for things that are for God. Rabbi Yossi Aglili letuma v'letayr lo itzturcha, and as we're going to see soon, we're going to make sense of this, that according to Rabbi Yossi Aglili, says, you don't need a pasuk to teach me this tuma and tara stuff of Rabbi Akiva. Ki itzturcha l'isr v'heter, what you need the pasuk to permit is to say that it's mutter to get benefit from it. Rabbi Akiva is v'heter lo tzarich kra, whereas Rabbi Akiva says, no, I don't need a pasuk to teach me that I can get benefit from it. What I need the pasuk to teach me is regarding Tumah and Tara. And now we are going to try to understand what really the basis of their machlokas is. So let's say that the machlokas between Rabbi Yossi Aglili, who says that Yossi l'chol malacha is coming to permit getting benefit from it, personal benefit and benefit for God. And right, so let's say that Rabbi Yossi Aglili savar lo sochelu mashma ben isra achila ben isra no. So let's say that Rabbi Yossi Aglili is like Rabbi Abahu, that when the pasuk says lo sochelu in the context of of Chaylev, it means don't eat it and don't get benefit from it. And therefore, when the pasuk comes to say that you're allowed to you do any work with the Chaylev, so it's coming to say it's takamuter bana. Because I would have assumed that it's asur ba'ana, because lo sochelu means asur ba'achila and asur ba'ana, like Rabbi Abo, and therefore we need the pasuk to say asur l'chol malacha to say that it's taka mutar ba'ana. Okay, Rabbi Akiva savar, and we'll say that Rabbi Akiva holds isra achila mashma, isra ana lo mashma, that Rabbi Akiva is like Rabbi Yossi. He argues with Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Akiva is like Chizkiah, who says that lo sochelu would be asur ba'achila but mutar ba'ana, and therefore, what I would have thought would be problematic is that I would have thought that the chaylev would be considered tameh for service of God, and therefore we have ye'asa l'chol melacha to say that no, you're even allowed to use the chaylev for it would be tahor for even the tzarech gavor, even for God. So v'chiyasa kra l'tumah v'tayra. And therefore, Rabbi Akiva would say that the pasuk is going to teach me about Tumah V'Tara, that this Chaylev is considered tahor for God. Lo, the Gemara says no. Do not say that the machlokas between Rabbi Yossi Aglili and Rabbi Akiva is about, if they hold in the way that Rabbi Abahu explained or Chizkiah explained. That's not the idea. Because rather, Rabbi Yossi Aglili and Rabbi Akiva both hold like Rabbi Abahu, that lo sochelu means asur b'achila and asur ba'ana. Alright, so what's the machlokas? Here's the machlokas. Rabbi Yossi Aglili savar, Rabbi Yossi Aglili holds, kishahutra nevayla, that when nevayla is mutar ba'ana, as we've seen recently, that it says, lo yochlu behema lo so. What is it? Behema lo sochelu, lo sochlu behema. Oh no, now I'm forgetting. Lo sochlu ko nevayla. Yeah, exactly. Right. Sorry, I don't know what I was saying, but lo sochlu ko nevayla. Don't eat nevayla. So it says lo sochlu ko nevayla, and that means, according to Rabbi Abahu, don't eat it, don't get benefit from it. However, the pasuk then says you're allowed to give it to a ger toshav or sell it to a nachri, and so we see that it's taka mutar bana. So we learn from there that in general, when it says lo yochel lo sochel lo sochelu, it means asur b'achila and asur bana as well. But by nevayla, it specifically says that you're allowed to get benefit from it, so that's why you're allowed to get benefit from it. And Rabbi Yosef Aglili says that when the pasuk says that you're allowed to get benefit from nevayla, it means specifically the meat you're allowed to get benefit from it. But that does not cover the chaylev, and it does not cover the gid anosha. You're not allowed to get benefit from the chaylev and from the gid anosha because chaylev is not considered like the meat of the animal, right? And only the meat is mutar bana, but the chaylev, which is not part of the meat, is asur bana. Now, therefore, we needed this pasuk of ye'aseh l'chol malacha to teach that even the chaylev is mutar bana, right? Meaning, nevayla is asur b'achila. I would have assumed that it's asur bana. The pasuk tells me that it's taka mutar bana. However, that only applies to the meat. It doesn't apply to the chaylev. The chaylev, the fats are not considered part of the meat, and therefore I would assume that the chaylev is asur bana, and therefore I needed l'chol malacha, ye'aseh l'chol malacha, to teach me that taka the chaylev is mutar bana. Now this also answers how come he doesn't need it for tumah and tara, because the whole reason to think that the chaylev would be tameh in the first place is to say, well, because nevayla is tameh. But if you say that the chaylev isn't considered part of the meat, well then there's no reason to assume that it is tameh like the rest of the meat of the nevayla. Fine. And therefore we just needed the pasuk to teach that it's mutar ba'hana'a, because I wouldn't have known that from nevayla. Rabbi Akiva savar, whereas Rabbi Akiva says kishotu nevayla chelba v'gida nami utru. Whereas Rabbi Akiva says that when nevayla was permitted, right, to say that you're allowed to get hana from the nevayla, well, it also includes the chaylev and the gid anosha, because the chaylev is considered part of the meat of the animal, and therefore, since it's considered part of the meat of the animal, well, I know that it's mutar bana. I don't need ye'aseh l'chol malacha to teach me that it's mutar bana. Nevayla is mutar bana, and therefore these fats are mutar bana. What I do need the pasuk to teach me is that, well, nevayla is an avatumos. I might think that the chaylev, which is considered part of the meat, according to Rabbi Akiva, would also be tameh. So therefore, I need the pasuk to say ye'aseh l'chol malacha to teach that the chaylev is taka tahor. So we need the pasuk for tumah and tara to teach that the chaylev is tahor. Fine, very beautiful. Now, Rabbi Yosef Aglili ashkachan chaylev d'shayir rachmana ba'anoya. Oh, so the Gemara says, okay, fine. So we see that according to Rabbi Yosef Aglili, the pasuk. So according to Rabbi Yosef Aglili, nevayla is mutar bana, but that doesn't include chaylev and gid anosha. Now, chaylev we nonetheless learned out on our own, because it says ye'aseh l'chol malacha to say that chaylev is mutar bana. Fine. What about gid anosha? Is gid anosha mutar bana? So the gid name of the asur. So let's say the gid anosha is taka asur bana, because we don't have any reason to say that would be mutar bana. Iba yisem achinami to asur. So one way to answer this is to say that's correct. Gid anosha is asur bana, like Reb Shimon had said the other day. Iba yisem, or if you want, I will say ma'isla b'kav chomer. Or if you want, I could argue that gid anosha would be mutar bana, because I can make a kal v'chomer. Umachaylev she'anush kares mias mutar bana. Well, if we're looking at chaylev, and chaylev, if you eat it, taka chayv kares, and yet you're permitted to get benefit from it, as we said, ye'aseh l'chol malacha. So gid she'eno anush kares lo kol sheken. Well, the gid anosha, which there's no chiv kares for it, well then certainly it should be mutar ba'ana. If chaylev, which is your chayiv kares for, is mutar ba'ana, then certainly gid anosha should be chayiv mutar ba'ana. V'Reb Shimon, the Aser. Now Reb Shimon, who the other day we learned says that Gid Anosha is taka Aser ba'ana. Why doesn't he make this Kal V'chomer to say, well, if Chaylev is mutar ba'ana, Gid Anosha should be mutar ba'ana? So Ikel Mifrach, well, because Reb Shimon is going to say, I can ask you, Ma l'Chaylev shekein hutar michlalo eitzel chaya. Chaylev, on the one hand, yeah, it's more strict than Gid Anosha in that you're chayav karis if you eat it. But it's more lenient than Gid Anosha in that Chaylev doesn't apply to chayas, only to behemoths. Tomar begid shelahutar michlalo eitzel chaya. Are you going to apply that halacha by Chaylev to Gid Anosha, which is more stringent in that it applies even to chayas? You're not allowed to eat the Gid Anosha. V'idach, whereas the other way to argue would be bebehema karmina, bebehema mias lo ishterei. We're talking about behemoths over here. We're talking about animals over here, and therefore we're not talking about chayas. And therefore, since by a behema, Chaylev is aser, and you are chayiv karis, and yet it's mutar ba'ana, so then certainly Gid Anosha, which is not chayiv karis, would be mutar ba'ana. Okay, so now the Gemara says, Michdei, let's see. Usvinu kolani kroi vishaninu. Chizka Rabbi Abba my plige. So the Gemara says, look, the funny thing is, at the end of the day, Chizka and Rabbi Abba basically agree. I mean, it sounded like they argue, right? Nice machlokas. Chizkiah says whenever you have ye'achel, it means aser b'achila and aser ba'ana. But if it says yochal, it means aser b'achila but mutar ba'ana. Rabbi Abba says yochal means aser b'achila but also aser ba'ana. But then, basically, every case that we brought, where it says lo yochal, lo sochal, lo sochelu, where Rabbi Abba theoretically would say it's aser b'achila and aser ba'ana, we found some reason to say why it would be mutar ba'ana. Now, Chizkiah would say that by lo yochal, lo sochal, lo sochelu, it's mutar ba'ana anyways. It's only aser b'achila, mutar ba'ana. But then in all of these cases where theoretically Rabbi Abba would say that it would be aser ba'ana, we found reasons to say that it's taka mutar ba'ana. So there weren't actually any cases where they actually argued. Because practically speaking, they ended up agreeing in every case. So what's the difference? So Michdei, let's say Osvinu Kolani Krai. So we asked all these questions from Psukim where we had things which according to Rabbi Abba should theoretically be Asher Ba'ana, but yet they ended up being Mutar Ba'ana, like Chizkiah holds. Vishaninu, we answered them. So Chizkiah Rabbi Abba, but my plige, what do they actually argue about? So b'chametz b'pesach v'aliba d'Rabbanan. So we're going to say that they argue by chametz on Pesach according to the rabbis who say that it's aser ba'ana. B'shor niskal v'aliba d'divrei hakol, and also by shor niskal, by an animal that killed somebody, and we have to stone it, and that you're not allowed to eat it, you're not allowed to get benefit from it. And the difference is really only just now they learn it out. Chizkiah nafakle mi lo ye'achel. Chizkiah learns it out from the fact that it says lo ye'achel, which means that it's aser b'achila and aser ba'ana. Rabbi Abba nafakle mi nevayla, and Rabbi Abba learns it out from nevayla, meaning from the fact that meaning according to him, lo ye'achel and lo yochal is the same difference, just that from the fact that by nevayla, the pasuk had to teach us that, the Torah had to teach us that it's mutar ba'ana, that implies that all of the other cases would be aser ba'ana. Fine, technicality, but michte, bein lamar, asur ba'ana, my benayu. So, but still, at the end of the day, fine, so Chizkiah learns it out from ye'achel, and Rabbi Abba learns it out from the diuk from nevayla. Okay, at the end of the day, they say the same thing, that by chametz on Pesach and by shor niskal, aser b'achila, aser ba'ana. No? So what's the difference? Beautiful. The nafkamine is if you have chulin, animals that are not korbanos, and they were slaughtered in the azara. So the question is it aser ba'ana or not? Chizkiah savar, Chizkiah holds lo ye'achel limute hane, also limute chulin shenishchtu ba'azar. So we saw this machlokas, we saw this idea on, what was it, Chaf Beis at the top, that it says by treifa, it says lakela tashlichun also, that you're allowed to throw the treifa to your dog, i.e. you're allowed to get benefit from it. But it says over there, so, that you're allowed to get benefit from, but not something else. What's that something else? So according to Chizkiah, I'll say, well, in general, whenever it says lo ye'achel, it means that you're not allowed to get you're not allowed to eat it, and you're not allowed to get benefit from it. When it says lo yochal, lo sochel, lo sochelu, it means you're not allowed to eat it, you are allowed to get benefit from it. Fine. So we know that. So what do we learn out from so? What's it excluding? That you're allowed to get benefit from treifa, but not something else. What's that other thing? That other thing is chulin shenishchatu ba'azara. Chulin shenishchatu ba'azara, you're not allowed to get benefit from. Okay, fine. Now, where are we? Oh my gosh. Fine. Lo yachal excludes, it says that, so from lo yachal we learn out that hameitz on Pesach and Shor Niskal, you are not allowed to eat, you're not allowed to get benefit from. So, and then when it says by treifa that you are allowed to get benefit from, you're allowed to throw it to the dog, but something else you're not allowed to, that adds chulin shenishchatu ba'azara to say that you're not allowed to get benefit from that either. Okay. Rabbi Abahu Savar, whereas Rabbi Abahu holds, so now this is specifically, I think, Rabbi Abahu according to Rabbi Yehuda, right? So meaning, remember, according to Rabbi Abahu says that when it says lo yochal lo sochel lo sochelu, you're not allowed to eat it, you're not allowed to get benefit from it. How do we know that? So we said according to Rabbi Yehuda says, this is going back to Chaf Mudbeis, whatever it is, Chaf Alf Mudbeis, that Rabbi Yehuda says that you can't learn out that lo yochal lo sochel lo sochelu is asur ba'achila and ba'ana'a from nevayla, from the fact that nevayla, we had to dafka say it's mutter ba'ana'a, implies that all the other cases are asur ba'ana'a, because he said devarim kichsavim, that actually you could right, it means that you have to give the nevayla to a ger toshav and sell it to a nochri. And theoretically you can argue that lo yochal lo sochel lo sochelu is actually mutter ba'ana'a, and we're being machmir over here by nevayla to say that you specifically have to give it to a ger toshav and sell it to a nochri. So then how does he learn out that lo yochal lo sochel lo sochelu is asur ba'achila and asur ba'ana'a? So he learns that out from la kelev tashlichun oso, that you're allowed to throw treifa to a kelev, but you're there, but not to anything else. And from there we learn out that therefore in any other case where it says lo yochal lo sochel lo sochelu, it is asur ba'achila and asur ba'hana'a. Only by treifa it's mutar ba'hana'a, but not by those other cases. So in that case, from oso we learn out that lo yochal lo sochel lo sochelu is asur ba'achila and asur ba'hana'a. In which case, he doesn't learn out from anywhere that chulin shenishchatu ba'azara is asur ba'ana'a. Right? So limute hane, chulin shenishchatu ba'azara, lav de'oraisa ninu. Right? So again, Rabbi Abahu Savar also limute hane, that also says that treifa is mutar ba'ana'a, but all of these other cases where it says lo yochal lo sochel lo sochelu is asur ba'ana'a. Chulin shenishchatu ba'azara, lav de'oraisa ninu. But chulin shenishchatu ba'azara is not asur midoraisa anyways, and that would be the nafkamina between Rabbi Abahu and Chizkiah. Chulin shenishchatu ba'azara, but although that is specifically Rabbi Abahu according to Rabbi Yehuda, because we saw the other day that Rabbi Abahu. I meant Rabbi Abahu according to Rabbi Yehuda, because we saw the other day that Rabbi Abahu according to Rabbi Meir, who says that you can actually learn out from nevayla that lo yochal lo sochel lo sochelu is asur ba'hana'a from nevayla. So then he says that actually also is able to learn out chulin shenishchatu ba'azara according to Rabbi Meir. So I think that would have to be according to Rabbi Yehuda, who needs a kelev tashlichun also to learn out that lo yochal lo sochel lo sochelu is asur ba'hana'a from, and that's how he would learn out essentially then hameitz and shor niskal. Wow, that got kind of complicated and technical at the end. Well, that was Daf Chaf Gimel, Masechta Pesachim. So at the beginning we just had more cases of things that are asur, that should theoretically be asur ba'achila and asur ba'ana, yet they seem to be mutar ba'ana. We gave reasons why they were specifically mutar ba'ana. Then we talked about we talked about benefiting from hameitz on Pesach. We saw the machlokus between Rabbi Yossi Aglili and the Chachamim. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says that it's mutar to get benefit from chametz on Pesach, whereas Chacham say it's asur. And then we talked about Chaylev of nevayla, machlokus between Rabbi Yossi Aglili and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says that Chaylev nevayla, well, he says that the Chaylev of nevayla is not considered like the meat of the nevayla, and therefore, while the meat of a nevayla is tameh, the Chaylev is tahor. However, while the meat of a nevayla is mutar to give, is mutar ba'ana, the Chaylev I would think would be asur ba'ana. Therefore, it says the asur l'chol malach to say that it's taka mutar ba'ana. Rabbi Akiva says that the Chaylev, the fats of a nevayla, is considered like the meat of the animal, and therefore it's mutar ba'ana. However, I would think that it's asur, that it would be tameh like the meat of the nevayla. Therefore, it says the asur l'chol malach to say that it's taka tahor. And then at the end we got into the difference between Rabbi Abo and Chizkiah. Like practically speaking, what's actually a nafkamina? A nafkamina would be chulin shenishchutu ba'azara, regular animals that were slaughtered in the azara. That Chizkiah would say that it's asur ba'ana, whereas Rabbi Abo, specifically according to Rabbi Yehuda, I think, would say that it's mutar ba'ana, but it's also not asur midoraisa in the first place. That was the Chav Gimel of Masechta Pesachim. Peace.